Yeah.
I was used to it. I usually either sat next to the teacher or up front anyway.
I'm sure it wasn't by your choice.
Hey, now, I sat there though.
Trying to say he's teacher's pet.
My mom was a teacher for 30 years. I know the type of student she put in the front row.
Hey, I was even privileged in Roosevelt for 3 years. I had a desk next to the principal. That's how good I
That's
was.
saying something.
It's hard to come by.
And then he went to Kennedy, the year I went to Kennedy, and at 8:05 I heard Mark Ralston to the principal's office. I'm like, I didn't do anything.
Yeah.
And we had a little sit down. He didn't want me to have a desk.
All right. It is 6:30 on Monday, September 23rd. We are in Swisher City Hall. I do hereby call this meeting to order. Please take roll.
Klein.
Here.
Keenick.
Here.
Pujol.
Here.
Roder.
Here.
Stagg.
Here.
Thank you. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Anyone opposed? Motion carried. Public comment, looks like everybody's here for stuff on the agenda, so anyone online?
No one online.
Anyone have any other comments other than what you're here for later? Alright. Consent agenda, can I get a motion to approve consent agenda?
Motion we approve consent agenda.
Thank you,
Second.
thank you. Discussion? Anything we need to know? Alright, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Sheriff, hello.
Evening.
What do you want to start with? It's your item.
So, couple things to talk about tonight. Obviously, it's the time of year, it's contract season. As you know from the past, I like to do this earlier in the fall and talk about the contract. That way, you and I can both plan better for budgets because we're on the same time schedule for budgets. I won't spend a ton of time tonight talking about the town time report from the last year and this year. A couple things just to, well, the question, one of you asked about the ICR, so just as a kind of a reminder, the information you get has a couple of key pieces of information. One, the easy one is the calls for service. So CFS there on the side, that's the amount of calls that actually we get and we respond to in town. And they come from one of three ways: either somebody calling in on the routine number, something a deputy initiates on their own, like a traffic stop, or going out checking on somebody, or giving stickers away, like I did a little bit ago. And the third one obviously is 911 calls. So those are the three main ways that calls are generated in your town. The second number there on the side is the ICR numbers. So that's a number we assign to an incident anytime we actually do a report or file a charge. So that's a little better metric of crime that actually happens in your town and gives you better understanding what's going on aside from calls for service. Calls are really helpful, but also if you want to know kind of the actual criminal activity you see, we get that from the ICR numbers. So we could pull an ICR number if it's, there's vandalism at the park, we're going to assign the ICR number because that's a reportable crime. To if we make an arrest for like OWI or domestic assault, or if we investigate a suicide, those are going to generate an ICR number too. ICR numbers only apply to the incident, but there can be multiple criminal charges that come from one incident report, which is why the ICR number and the total number of offenses will never be the same, because we can have an ICR pulled for an OWI, but if the driver also has, their 3-year-old kid in the car and has, an ounce of meth or something like that, those are going to be 3 offenses for that one incident number. So that's why that number on the back is going to be different. There'd be multiple charges for the incident report. As far as the changes from last year, some things are up and some are down. Obviously, your contracting we have like a side gig going, if you will, for the Wednesday nights at Dancemore, and so that's going to have an effect on some of these numbers. But overall, things are roughly the same. I'm not seeing too much of a change anywhere that is maybe noteworthy. The things that can kind of affect some of these numbers even within a year is one house can affect some of our activity, you know, and we see the same thing in every community. There can be one or two addresses that generate a lot of our activity. Sometimes it's a person or could be an apartment building or something along those lines, that can affect the numbers overall. But if you look at from last year to this year, the total number of ICRs are down by 6. You know, the total number of criminal charges are down by 5. But that could go up next year from even a couple scams could affect that. It just kind of depends on the year. The traffic stop numbers have taken a big jump, but I think if you control for that, and again, I think a lot of that is related to the extra activity on Wednesday nights. Things are somewhat status quo, if you will. But I think there's a change coming, and that's really what we should also talk about is, I think as you grow, you do need to start thinking about increasing the hours that you contract. You've been flat for a long time, which is a good thing. However, it's time to slowly start bumping those up. We see this in our other towns too, that when really the problems that we see and that the things that blip on your radar when it comes to your growth really start to happen before the lights come on in the houses. We start to see the impacts of growth as soon as they're turning dirt in a subdivision. That's when we start to see more need for law enforcement. You know, construction sites are targets for burglars, and given your particular proximity to Cedar Rapids, you get hit more than some of our other communities. So that's really something that's on my radar for what's coming to you is I see, you know, it looks like there's already a well going in for one of these houses up here. As you start to see more, you know, construction trailers and everything else that goes with your growth, the demands on our services really start now that you've got Streets Board. And as you grow, you're not growing from, you know, Swisher Originals, if you will. You're growing from people coming to your community because they want to come to a small town. And a lot of those people are used to a different level of service. And so when they don't get that, there's a big adjustment. We have to help explain that, but you will too when people are upset, wanting to know why, you know, what took so long for the police to get here or what's going on. You're going to have to start adjusting to the level of service that new residents expect compared to the ones that have been here a long time and understand it. But really the best way to get ahead of it is to start growing and be ready to meet those demands when we get here. In our town time and how we figure the hours in my little chart, you guys have always been kind of the oddball for how many hours a week you contract. So I'd like to clean that up just a little so it makes a little more mathematical sense, because everybody else is like 14 hours a week or 26 hours a week or something, and Swisher has always been 26.8 decimal points out or something like that. So I'd like to round that and make it a little more easier on my end, but really the schedule for the next 5 years is the other piece of this. So if you remember from last year, I talked about, you know, at the county, we're really trying to get all the towns to start moving towards closing the gap between what you pay versus what it actually costs to put a deputy sheriff out on the road. The amount of money that the towns pay historically has covered about 85% of salary and benefits. If I figured in what the cost of car and training and fuel and all those stuff, it drives that gap even farther. So in an effort to try and start closing that gap, to move towards 100%, at the time when I figured this, it was going to take 5 years at $4 an hour a year for an increase to start moving towards that 100%. And if memory serves, when I figured these numbers, historically our raises for the union had been averaging like 3.25% over the long term. The contract we're in now, which went into effect in July, the union negotiated 4% for this year, 5% for next year. So that's actually had an impact on this rate. So what it means now is that by going up the $4 an hour here only actually has about a 1% increase on that offset on our end. So this year, the cost you're paying actually covers about 86%. To get to 87% next year would need to be $4 an hour. If we did anything less, we're actually gonna be holding the line, and ultimately, we're gonna start having that gap open up again. So these numbers here are really, if I went and refigured them, the deal would change. The other thing this does is, again, having the 5-year schedule for not only the rate, but then the hours. That way you and I both know what the budget looks like for the next 5 years. You can plan for it, I can plan for it, and that way, one, when I go in to talk to the board about our budget in the fall, my revenue estimates aren't guesses, they're solid. And that by having this in place, then we're not trying to chase down contracts or harass all of our city clerks to get the contract signed after the first of the year. That way, these are in place, there's continuity for the contract, and then we can all plan and budget accordingly. The way we have this set up is also that we can adjust the hours within the life of the contract. We can adjust those through a meeting down the road, you vote, we can make that change, and it doesn't upend or change the contract. We can still make those adjustments within the life of the contract, and we don't have to renegotiate. The other big difference you see in the contract itself is the format. So historically, the contract we've had has been more like an MOU, kind of old school looking contract. Really what we should have been doing the whole time is a 2080 agreement, because that's what we're doing. We have an intergovernmental agreement for services, and that squarely falls under Chapter 2080. So this really formalizes it and brings it into compliance with the code. The scope and terms of the service are the same as we had in the last contract. What we're doing is the same. We just modernized it into a better looking kind of form, and even added some language about, coordinating like mental health professionals if we need to, that kind of thing. And again, it also gives us, or, whether it's next year or 2 years from now, whatever council looks like, we can make those hourly adjustments within there if we need to. But that way, you can budget, the rate, and you can plan for it for the next 5 years. So I think that is the short version.
Questions for the sheriff?
I got just one quick question. On the pages where it says types of calls for service, and you got City of Swisher 22, 23. The business check in that year was 43, and then the business check in 23, 24 was 100. What is considered a business check? Would that be like having to check on the?
Yep, so a lot of that is going to be, so obviously, again, you pay for the reserves to be there, that's one assignment, but then I expect the deputies and the sergeants to also be coming into town to check and touch base. So whenever they go out of their car for any activity, we have to create a call of some sort.
Okay.
So we'll call it a business check.
Okay, so that's why the numbers go up so much. Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Other questions? I know Shelley and I had talked about this, doing a 5-year agreement. It's definitely gonna help with our budgeting and our city side, so I see nothing but benefits here.
And just so you're aware, so this is the same contract that I'm proposing to all the towns this year. Solon just approved it last week. Lone Tree and Oxford, I spoke to a couple weeks ago. It takes me about 6 weeks to come around and hit everybody, because some of the towns, you guys all meet on some of the similar nights, so I can't get to Hills and Shoeyville until next month. But again, it's the same, the rates are the same. Really the only difference is some towns have different needs for hours. Shoeyville's still at 14 a week. Solon's at 45. They went up from 40 last year, and they're gonna continue to grow too. Lone Tree's at 26, I think, something like that. So we just kind of we have to make adjustments and, really kind of an educated guess on what everybody needs. But everybody's needs are different. Not everybody's growing, not everybody has the same amenities, and clearly Swisher is looking to grow, not only from what I see, but in the half hour before I came to town, you're advertising what your events are going on in Shoeyville. You know, you've got a library, you've got everything else, and you're trying to get more people here. And as you do, there's the demand for our services increase.
How long did you guys just signed a contract, you said, how long was that for, that union contract?
That's a 2-year
That's
contract.
just the 2 years.
It's just a 2-year agreement. Yep, and so,
So going out 5 years, we wouldn't know if your contract's gonna go up 4 or 5, or you
No.
know?
and that's a very good point, you know, again, it's 4 this year, 5 next year. And really, we'll be negotiating, you know, we'll probably start on that next summer
Right.
as we go into it again. So historically, again, over the long term, the average has been 3 or 3.25%. If you follow that average, that's a good chance what it'll be 2 years from now, but it might not. And that's just on the salary side. You know, the benefits are the other piece of
Right.
everything that goes up. You know, we figure for X amount of salary dollars for a deputy sheriff, you add about 40% for the benefits.
So you're having to increase your deputies now, don't you, because of all these, or how much increase in staff are you having to do because of the more use the smaller towns are using?
Yeah, so it's a good question. We've added, I was just running the numbers today. I think since I've been in office, we've added a total of 8 deputies to the sheriff's office. Now, that's across investigations, a couple specialty positions in the jail or in the jail division. Tiffin has 2 dedicated to them specifically, which is, they're paying for it at a different rate, and that was negotiated through a separate contract. However, because they have 2, I still need a depth. You know, I gotta look at the patrol division as like a baseball team. I gotta have a depth chart. So Tiffin added 2 full-time. I added 2 more so that, you know, because they have time off and training and everything else. So I had to have those 2 to correspond to those. But everybody's also growing. You know, we see our calls go up, not only in the towns, but in the rural parts of the county too. So we have to make sure we're ready to adjust accordingly. This will help us plan, because this way we also know what the towns are looking at for the next few years. And then when I'm asking for personnel to the board, I can talk about, here's what the demands of the towns are looking like.
On a financial, like, question for the town, would it be, is there any way like that, it would be better to up the hours for Swisher, if there was a way to have them just do, and then be able to do away with the reserve cops on Wednesday? You know what I'm saying? I'm just trying to like say, like, would it be better like if, like, say on a Wednesday night, instead of you guys only being out here 6 hours, I'm just using that number, you know, we've got 2 guys at 5 hours, would it be better feasible for the city to not have to worry about reserve cops, and like in our contract be that we've got more hours dedicated to Swisher and some of it to be on a Wednesday night? Or is there not a way you can do that really?
I don't think so. It's a good question, but I don't think that's the way to go, because if you, let's say you wanted 3 hours every Wednesday, you know, additional 3, but if I'm staffing that with a deputy, I'm probably gonna wind up, I might have to wind up paying overtime, because I have to, if I'm gonna assign them here.
Right, you might have
For
to
that
charge
time.
us more for that. Or-
And then they're not available the rest of the area, because the deputies work, so we have 3 patrol beats at the sheriff's office. You're in what's called our area 2 or north, so it's the deputy working up here for this shift is covering Swisher, Shoeville, Solon, and the range goes from the county line all the way to Sharpless.
Okay.
So if I'm gonna assign them up here, then they're off, they aren't available for anything else.
Gotcha.
I
was just wondering, like, on a, you know, cause it's costing us more money every week or whatever, that we're having reserve cops. I didn't know if there was like a way to, like, catch that in with capture it in with your guys' cost, even if your guys' cost was a little bit more per hours, but if it's not, I understand. I was just.
No, and if we were gonna do it, I'd probably have to fill it by us making an overtime shift.
Right.
And in the contract, we can't put it can't be anything less, 2 hours is at least the minimum overtime shift. And, you know, time and a half at.
Right. It's a lot more than a reserve cost.
Well, yeah, I mean, So the actual salary and benefit per hour cost for the 7-year deputy sheriff is $61 an hour. And so if we were gonna charge you time and a half,
That would be
it'd be a lot
93.
more.
Yeah.
So no, I think what we're doing, I think, is working and is the
Okay.
right way to tackle it.
Okay.
Final questions? All right, can I get a motion for approval?
Oh, we'll get this in a resolution form on the next agenda.
What do you need for tonight then?
You
I
don't,
don't need any.
you don't need a resolution.
But we will. But we will. It's just easier for tracking for us.
Okay.
So it'll be on the next agenda.
Do you need something tonight? Is that what you're leading up to?
No, I don't, I
Okay.
just, if you want a res, that's your
We
call.
will.
You won't need to be here for that.
No,
It's
no,
fine.
yeah.
And then once I have all these, once all the towns vote on them, then ultimately I go to the board of supervisors, we talk about it, but that way these are all in place by the end of the calendar year. And then that way, and then my visits every year, I mean, I'll still make them. But it's not negotiating so much the contract, we can also treat it as more just feedback, which, just so we're clear, if you have feedback, any time is a good time to give it to me, so.
Your guys are really good, when they come every month,
Thanks.
they chat
But-
with us and they know what's going on in town, so
Good.
we've never felt the need to go
Good.
to you.
If you do, obviously, that's what I'm here for too. I mean, I'm elected just like you guys are too, so if if you have your own concerns or questions, by all means, you can absolutely get a hold of me, and same way with the public. I mean, they have any questions, comments, concerns. Like somebody got a concern on Facebook tonight, so take them anyway and get them. Happy to come back anytime too. So need something else, by all means, let me know. We're glad to be able to do this for you. I enjoy the fact we're able to provide this service to the towns, and I know some sheriffs, I'm sure you feel differently about what it's like policing small communities, but I enjoy it, so I appreciate the opportunity to do this for you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Sheriff.
Thank you.
All right, Laura, we're up to you for the annual report for the library.
Okay, I'm gonna hand these out because I meant to get these to you earlier, but as I told Shelley earlier, it takes me till Halloween to get caught up from the summer. I am still frantically behind. Every year, at the end of fiscal year, every year at the end of fiscal year, the state requires that I file an annual report. It gets filed with the state library and it gets filed with the Institute of Museum and Library Services in Washington, DC. So I just kind of wanted to take a chance to kind of pull out a couple things out of that report that I just did. I want to start with income and expense. You'll notice we get our income from basically 4 main places: City of Swisher, Johnson County, City of Shoeyville, and the state of Iowa. And this, from between fiscal 23 and fiscal 24, City of Swisher came down a little bit, but that's because both Johnson County and City of Shoeyville went up. And that's because when we look down in the bottom, in the middle section, it says collections and circulation. Johnson County's contribution is based on the percentage of our circulation that goes to county residents. So we track every time somebody checks a book out, whether it's going to a county resident is Swisher, a resident is Shoeyville. Shoeyville works the same way. We negotiate a 3-year contract with Shoeyville that's based on an average, but it's basically tracks. So they're paying for their patrons, county is paying for their patrons, and our county patronage is a little higher than our city patronage right now because the growth around us, where they're coming to for library services, is to us. So we tend to stay pretty steady with the City of Swisher contribution, even though we went up significantly. And where that increase went was to salary and wages. We hired a part-time person for the first time. They are working, well, we started out with Leah Ritter. She had to leave us, her father got very ill and she had to leave to go do family service. We now have Amanda Latta, who I believe is related to Mike Stagg. She says her mother is your mom's cousin, I think. Yes. She's from Mount Vernon, but she's related around here. So we've hired that person. It's because of growth. We're growing. We needed that person. Also, for those of you who don't know me, I am well past retirement age. I could go at any time.
So you're not going to.
Just piss me off and out the door all night. No.
Threads.
Yeah, you'd have to really piss me off. So we're starting that, getting somebody else into what I do. We also ended up hiring, we've always had a high school girl who works in the summer. They usually work, I should say high school student, who works in the summer. They usually work 10 hours in the summer, and then over the winter they'll work 2 or 3 hours a week depending on what kind of projects they're working on. We ended up with 2 this summer, and the reason for that is reflected down below when we get into programs for kids and family. We went from 74 programs in fiscal '23 to 101, and our attendance went up 900 people. The 2 high school kids we had this year were a big part of that. Kelsey Taylor and Sammy Waltz did a great job, and they were a big part of why those numbers went up so high. Programs for adults, those numbers went up, the number of programs we had, the number of attendance. That's because our new assistant is doing adult programming, and we are just seeing more and more call for what can you do for us as adults. Tomorrow night, there's a program, the state geologist is coming to talk about underground geology in Iowa. He's been up now, I think this is his 3rd or 4th program. He's very popular. Comes and talks about how water moves under the state of Iowa, how he did a whole thing on caves and caves, which I don't know what those are, but people were fascinated. And then door count, you can see we've gone up over 1,000 people a year. The interesting thing to me is our computer usage is down significantly. It was down last year from pre-COVID, and we finally figured out what it is. It's when the school handed out computers to every kid. Every kid has a device. That just dropped our computer usage just tremendously. 98% of people who come in to use the computer just want to print something. Used to be a very different scenario. However, our wireless sessions have gone up. Wireless sessions, or you can sit in our parking lot and use our wireless. A lot of that is the sheriff. The sheriff, they come and they sit in our parking lot. And believe me, at 7:30 on a January night, and I have a Kirkwood student sitting in the building all by herself, I don't mind having the sheriff sitting out in the parking lot one bit. So that's kind of the rundown on the annual report. The other piece is, as all good libraries do about every 10, 12 years, we just had a space needs assessment done. This was a grant from the state pays for it. They come in, they look at our space, they look at what our needs are, and clearly they caught on real quick. We're a growing population. I flipped that this is just kind of an executive summary. The basic finding is we're too small for what we are. State of Iowa divides libraries by size. An A library is under 500 in population. A B library is 500 to 1,000. We're currently a B library because they count our population, not including the rural area we serve outside. But even so, at 924, we're right up against the next size up, and a C library is 1,000 to 2,500. And there are different requirements that the state has: how many seats you have in the building, how many bathrooms you have, et cetera, all this kind of thing. So their big findings were, you guys are small for where you are, and when you hit C, you're gonna be too small still. So just kind of keep that planning in mind, they're telling us. I will say the biggest thing, and to me, the biggest disappointment in the study was our collection size. We are way below average even for a B-size library. There are a couple reasons for that. The big one is we're only 15 years old, so we don't have the backlog of, we haven't been buying for 45 years. We've been buying for 15. We'll get there. Also, we weed seriously. Because it's always a balancing act between books on the shelf and space for people to sit, space for programs to go on. So we try and keep those numbers in check. That's pretty much what I've got. I did want to say one other thing that I forgot to put on here. This year, we got a grant from the American Libraries Association to make our building more accessible. We have just put in an automatic door on the front door because if any of you have been in and out of the building, the door is incredibly heavy. Children cannot get the door open. They ring the doorbell so I can come and let them in the door. So we now have a door and they all think it's great fun to push the button and the door opens. There's a little bit of money left in that grant. We will most likely put some kind of a ramp at the back door to bridge that little threshold that's there. Yeah, and ALA is fine with that. So I just kind of wanted to give you kind of a quick update on where we are, what we're looking at. Like everybody else, like the sheriff, like everybody else, we're looking at it going, we're gonna grow. We need to start thinking about, we're not ready to jump, but we're ready to start thinking. So, okay.
Questions for the library?
So do you guys have any ideas about growth? I mean, we're looking from 1,200 to almost 5,000 square foot space.
Yeah.
What's the library's ideas?
Well, ideally, I'm gonna throw South Slope out of the back of the building. And we'll take the back of their building. We do have the right of first refusal on that building and on the lot next door to it. I hate to think about, this is a great location for us. It's great for us, it's great for downtown. I worked in economic development for years. One of the things they always tell you is you want things downtown that people will return to repeatedly. A library is one of the top ones. You know, so we really want to stay here. That would be my ideal. Anybody who knows how to get South Slope out of the back of the building, call me up. I've been threatening them for years. Other than that, I don't really know. You know, Cody, I don't want to build a building. That might be what sends me off the edge, you know. But I recognize it's going to have to happen, and something's going to have to happen.
What's in the back of South Slopes building?
South Slope has emergency switching equipment for northern Johnson County. And under FCC regulations, as long as they have that equipment in the back of the building, they have to own the building.
And then it's not easy to get that moved.
No, when we first started, space about the size of this room, they've now got that equipment down to a space about the size of that table. The big problem is there are some cables that run in under the lot next door. That's the stuff that would cost to move. So, but they have talked about that eventually they will move out of that. You know?
They are slowly getting rid of some of their outliers and condensing.
Yeah, they are.
It's taking years.
Yeah, and like I say, their equipment used to take up a huge space. It's gotten way down, so, yeah.
Well, thank you, Laura. Appreciate you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Laura.
Thanks for your continued.
Try. 120th Street Division Street annexation, we are currently on hold with the county to approve the numbers. So our engineer did everything he was supposed to do, ran the numbers very, very close to what he thought it was going to be. And so we're just waiting for county approvals.
Can I ask a question on that? Is this payment to finalize what we on the street, or is that to get the property?
The second,
The latter part? Okay.
yeah, where you guys decided to move forward.
Because I thought this, our street costs were all paid some time ago, weren't they? I was led to believe anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Alright, sanitary sewer maintenance program, Tim's here with HR Green.
All right, a while ago, we were directed to look look into potentially doing some kind of sewer maintenance program for the entire city. Surrounding communities as well. And so we use those kind of as an example, just to kind of craft this. I was told you didn't want anything super pretty, so I didn't make it super pretty. I just kind of did it in memo format. We picked a 10-year cycle. We broke the community up into 10 different regions. The last one being Mark's subdivision to the north out there. Even in 10 years, expectation is probably just be videoing and hopefully there won't be any issues there. So if you've read the memo, it kind of talks about what we were trying to do here. You have currently almost 33,000 linear feet of pipe in the ground of various ages. You have some that is still vitrified clay pipe, which is very old. Then you have some other areas like the Orchard subdivision where you do have PVC in the ground, but that's 2000 is when it was done. Then you have some stuff out there in the newest version of Fishers, that was 2013. Also, the line that came up from when they did the plant, that was 2009, I think it was. So you do have various stuff, obviously the stuff we're doing this year, stuff they're doing in that subdivision this year as well. So first thing we need to do in each of these regions is go out and televise all the lines. That way we can get a sense of the condition of the pipes, what needs to be done. We did go ahead and make some assumptions, that it's gonna be roughly about $4 a foot to televise this stuff. If we get a large amount of footage or something, that could come down, could go. But it's something we would definitely take quotes on. Then we assumed a certain amount of footage that would need to be lined of those pipes. Again, the televising would tell us that. This is just some numbers we've been seeing in some other communities as well. We also counted the manholes in the different areas. Typically, we don't run into too many that are very bad. I don't think you have any brick manholes, do you, Justin?
Not that
I
I've
don't
seen.
think so. But you may have some that are really leaking significantly or maybe deteriorated. So those may require lining. I think we just assumed one manhole per area that need to be lined. Then also perhaps the line is good, all except for maybe one spot where maybe a joint has broken or service has created a pipe to collapse or start to break out around, where you would just dig down at that specific spot and repair that area. So we call those spot repairs. So each region we assumed a certain amount of televising, a certain amount of lining, a certain amount of lining of manholes, and a certain amount of spot repairs. And we tried to shoot for roughly around 50,000 a year. That's kind of what the numbers we're looking at. So as you go through here, you can see there's 47,000, 49,000. A couple of them that are just a smidge over 50. There's a 40,000 and a 30, 39, 31. So I guess I don't know if we wanted to talk about the money left over from the roadway project or not at this point in time.
Yeah, we could potentially use that bond money, because we're all aware it needs to be spent quickly. So you were thinking, do 3 sections this year so we could use a chunk of that money?
Sure, I mean, this is the kind of assessment that we can do over the winter time. We can get out and do the televising and stuff throughout the winter time, and then in the spring we could hit it with whatever type of repairs that you would need. There is a certain amount of money, as you guys well know, left over from your bond for Division Street. We're looking at roughly 121,000 to pay back the county for the roadway work in front of the annexation area. That would leave you, I'm sorry, I can't remember, 150,000 give or take.
Right now, there's $396,000 in that,
So,
in that fund, so.
yeah,
So
per-
even if we did 3 regions and your numbers are close to being accurate, we would still have a little bit of money left over.
Correct, yeah, so it's good to have a little contingency. So this program for the first round could actually maybe be accelerated a little bit. If you look at the map of the regions at the back there, we did kind of put the older part of town first. So you could get in there and get those worked on quickly. Then, you know, your better parts of town would be out a little farther. Then you can get back on your 10-year rotation. So,
With the repairs and everything, how much tearing up of everything would there be?
Don't know if they
It depends.
I mean, if it's lining, Kurt, you can do that from the manholes. You
Okay.
don't have to tear them up. The thing that would tear up stuff would primarily be the spot repairs. The manholes, maybe depending on the lining we have to do, we might have to take the cone off the top, which would be removing the patch around it. But primarily it'd be the spot repairs, digging down a certain area.
Right.
This 20%, this is just an estimate, you're not automatically do a lining 20%?
Yeah.
This is where it needs it or not?
Only if we need to.
How do you line them when they're full of effluent?
They get clean, yeah, they flush it out.
You plug them off, Daryl. That manhole to
What
manhole.
do you seal them with?
They have plugs that are pumped up with air. It's hard for me to describe. They slip them in there, they're large pump.
Yeah.
Just kind of roll all the way through
Yeah.
that pipe.
And you can pump them up and that'll kind of shut down the flow long enough for them to do the line.
What do they line with, or how do they?
So there's a few different methods. You can actually, one kind of the oldest method would be just slip lining in, which would be
Sweet.
sliding another pipe inside of it. But the type that kind of is my preference is in situ forming. It's almost like a balloon that blows up inside of it. They pump like a cementatious slurry or whatever you want to call it. And that lines it in there as well. So then they just have to go in and cut out the surface.
What they do then, they push through the main line and it's like a big balloon that goes in with resin, hardens. They have a machine that cuts it open on both ends and then they'll go with a crawler cam with a cutout wheel on it and they know where every service is and they just cut that out.
With this, say you have to do 20%, when do you come back and check the other 80? Because if 20% is bad, 80%'s gotta get close.
Well, we're
So this is
saying,
50 years old, is that?
yeah, we're saying right now that according to this, you would be doing it, you'd be coming back each region every 10 years.
Okay.
But if you do 3, the worst right away up front, you're talking about cutting that back to 7 years to get there.
Yeah.
The second time. And then you're hopefully caught up pretty well that you can keep going every 10 years. But, you know, televising could tell us that it's worse than that.
It could, or it could be better than we think, and we might have enough money to do Region 4 too.
Right.
Truthfully, we don't know anything until we decide to put out a contract for the televising.
We televise some, in spot places, what do they look like?
Well, I mean, if you take, for instance, the televising we did down Howard and out there, those pipes, they were all clay.
Yeah.
And they were leaking, like I said, for groundwater and there were cracks and things like that. You know, it not only needed to be upsized, it needed to be reconstructed, just because it was in bad shape. So, I'm afraid we could get into some tough spots. I mean, the one you just rotor-rooted out through to roots and stuff, that would, right off the top.
That'd be in
would
section 1, right off the bat.
Yeah, that would be a lining project.
Where's that at?
That alley over behind on the other side of Summit over there.
Okay,
Ockenfeld's alley, right there. Justin had an
tell
emergency
me
call.
where it's at.
Yeah.
Give me a name.
Right.
What
But-
street, give me a name.
He had an emergency call, that sewer main plugged from those big cottonwoods there. And he had to have rotor-rooter emergency call. He was here till midnight, almost 1 in the
Yeah,
morning,
it was late.
waiting on, they came here and they got it.
It
All right.
backed up all the way
If you're going on it,
up the block.
you're going on it, response is what you said.
So, Shelley did some math, even without having, the county's
approval, let's say we're a little bit off, and they up it by a couple
Just cushion it a
thousand,
little.
just cushion it a little bit. We'd still have about $270,000 we have to spend, has to be
By
out
of next
of
year.
the fund, so it has to be check cashed.
Well, if you don't spend it, does it go against the indebtedness?
No, but
What can be used on?
we're gonna be penalized because right now those are
Infrastructure.
tax exempt.
But that would leave 270,000, we could do more than 3 zones.
Well,
this-
televising for sure,
if-
right? You could televise more than
If we
one.
decided to start out with the first 3 zones,
It's only 100. What are you gonna do?
and
with
see
the other
where-
120?
You don't know how much it's actually.
I get that.
I just,
That's a big
to
cushion.
start and see what happens after we go yeah, through
we
the
can
process.
revisit this the first of the year, or. How long would this take to go out for bid, get somebody in, to get them camera? Like,
I don't
are you
think
talking
it'd
a
take
month,
very
2
long.
months?
Yeah, I think we could get some on the street and potentially have quotes, maybe, if not the last meeting of October, we could do the first meeting.
Cause what I'm thinking is if we start first 3 zones and we find all kinds of issues and try to assess, okay, now what is it gonna cost for us to address those issues? And then, once that's in place, we decide what to do going forward there. Then we look at what we got left. And if we can go on and maybe do another zone or 2, let's just do it step by step. But I
Shelley, when
think-
did that have to be used by?
May, next May,
2025.
May 2025.
Okay.
So
Scrap
you're
by
talking
May of
Check cut,
2025.
so
Okay.
it's-
6
well-
months from now.
Has to be empty.
Is sub-zero weather gonna hurt this
So,
project?
keep in
Sub-zero
mind,
weather?
Not the camera, no.
keep in mind, when we
Not the
cut a
line.
check and we
Not
send it to
lining
a
where
business,
the camera.
hey, when we cut a check and we send it to a business, they don't always cash it that same day. So you gotta give yourself cushion. So yeah, we gotta spend it by May, which means we gotta have a check cut end of March, beginning of April. So
So our
you gotta
time-
start
so-
backing yourself up, and if he's saying 2 months, then you're talking January, February, that we gotta know if we're gonna spend the last of the money. We don't have a lot of time.
Yes.
It's fine.
So the question is, do you wanna do 3 zones or 4?
I would rather do 4 personally.
Okay.
For cameraing, after cameraing, we
Yeah,
can,
we can.
Tim can
Yeah, we
put
always decide after.
put together a list and we can get rough numbers. If we have money to do, fix all 4 regions, that is that time. But it does not hurt and it's not that much more money to camera 4. So I would rather do 4 right now, spend the money on camera and know what we're up against.
Are you making a motion for that?
Yes, I am.
I'll second.
Okay, hold on. And also seek proposals of the same?
See proposals to camera all
All-
4,
all of
First
them?
4 sections.
first 4 regions, region
First
1 through
4
4,
regions.
camera.
Do you want to motion it to repair the first 3 or not?
No.
Not till we get the quotes?
Cause we need to have Tim put together a comprehensive plan of what needs to be fixed. So then we can decide at that time a rough budget for that to go out for proposals. Step 1 is the cameraing, which hopefully Tim can have out and possibly numbers back within a month and a half. And then that gives us winter to get that, and then very start of spring to get numbers for point repairs and everything else.
Tim, do you have a certain contractor you use for that? Or do you?
I don't, we'll put it out for quotes and call around and try to get as many people to get us quotes.
I didn't know if maybe you had it in with somebody, you know, or.
I mean, I've worked a lot with like municipal pipe to a lot of guys.
Yeah. Okay.
Alright, other questions? We have a motion and a second, can I, all in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries, there you go, Tim, thanks. Alright, resolution 61, consideration of approving the final plat for Pleasant Hill, first edition.
Motion to approve resolution 61, 2024.
Discussion? Can I get a roll call vote, please?
Klein,
Yes.
Enoch,
Yes.
Pujol, Roder,
Aye.
Stagg.
Aye.
Motion carries, thank you so much.
You learn anything something that
Two
way?
seconds.
Didn't expect that.
Let me go ahead of the fire. When will you sign the resolution?
Tomorrow.
Okay. Yeah, because that's all, I mean, I just have to have that to record.
Yeah, I always stop in the day after.
Okay.
Because she's gotta type up some stuff.
Okay, yep. Sounds
First
good.
house is going in this year?
Yeah, I have 4. So, I mean, talking to Tim, all we have left really is electricity Alliant. That was something you guys needed, but Dean's been out of the office. Tomorrow I'll have that paid for. They're actually gonna start staking to put that in and the tops. You know, and the tops for the intake tops, and they delivered the first load today. Roger will be here tomorrow. So,
I did get a call from a builder already.
Yeah.
For
Yeah.
Bill,
and he's,
And I told him no.
yeah, I know, but he's ready. I mean,
Yeah.
and it takes him about 3 weeks before I can even get an abstract. So, yep, alright, perfect. No, it looks good, we're close.
Good.
Alright, perfect.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Rather pay him.
See, you could've just come yourself.
I know, I didn't know if you needed something, so thanks.
Thanks, guys.
All right, resolution 62 of 2024, approving the preliminary and final plat for Hidden Ridge subdivision part 2 in Chuck County.
Motion approved.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Discussion? Can I get a roll call vote, please?
Enoch,
Aye.
Pujol.
Aye.
Roder,
Aye.
Stag,
Aye.
Klein.
Aye.
Thank you, motion carries. 12, amend city code chapter 95 and 99, for the sanitary sewer system and service charges.
So I don't know if you saw, in the packet, there was a draft with revisions in red that I put together, sent to the city attorney. I don't have those, back yet, but this was his recommendation based on, one, property owner here in town that has an 8-plex. And is constantly questioning whether or not they should be charged 8. I've worked for 4 other cities, and every property, every town charges based on the dwelling unit, and all of their code sections are written exactly the way the city of Swishers is written, but our city attorney feels like we should amend our code.
Amend our code?
Don't we
To
have,
clarify.
To clarify.
Oh.
Okay.
Yeah,
So the
amend our
stuff
code.
in red,
But he hasn't reviewed that yet. He wanted, of course, me to put it together, send it to him for review, so.
how many connection charges did she pay for when she put that in?
Oh, I would have no
Should have been
idea.
8.
I would have no
But if-
idea.
If she was, it says right here, multifamily residential, 2,000 per dwelling unit.
I would,
So if you get a connection, she may have one pipe out there, but any large building has only one main going to the main sewer, they all feed into it.
Yep.
Right, so,
We're all on the
so,
same page.
so technically, there's 8 connections.
I can see where the wording was a little vague.
yeah, but the wording is standard.
It's
Well, I
standard.
know it's standard,
Shelley
but it's
checked a
still,
lot of other
Yeah.
cities, and it is standard
For-
wording, but this is what our lawyers.
Were you
recommend.
guys here when she first brought this to council?
Yeah.
You guys were on, okay.
Yeah.
so you weren't
so
on-
what about
she,
like-
she didn't come while I was here, so you
No.
guys were not on council.
okay.
So
Kurt and
they were
Daryl
here.
weren't, but,
But
I
we
think, but
were
as we
here.
sat here, I think.
You were
yeah,
here.
sure, sure,
We
sure,
were here.
sure.
So you guys know the basis of it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
I know Judy.
Okay,
so like, are all of the other apartment complexes
Yes.
based the same way, like
Yes.
Dean's? Or I don't,
Yes.
Catholic doesn't own that anymore, does
They
it?
you know,
Most other apartment complexes make the
That's-
renters pay that
Mhm.
fee.
Right.
It's her choice not to.
this property owner continues to use Kava House. And I can pull it up right now. Kava House pays a commercial charge for the downstairs and 3 times the residential for the 3 units upstairs. No city only charges once. And I don't know if you read, her attorney called our city attorney, who then said, well, I don't know anything about it, you need to call Shelley, call the city clerk. Totally took what I said out of context by saying that's just the way we do it. No, the practice for every city is to charge based on the number of dwelling units. Well, where does your code say that? It might not say that, but that's policy practice of 4 cities that I've worked for. That all had water, don't get me wrong, they all had water, but I did check with Walford, who also only has sewer, and their code is written exactly the way our code is written. But they're claiming that if you read her attorney's letter, basically it says like, and Cody, I'm gonna pick on you. We should be charging you, your wife, and I don't know how many kids you got. And your 3 children all $73 if that's the way our code says.
Not to use the same toilet.
Right.
That's not right.
No.
No.
So
Yeah,
basically,
so-
all that's advocated is changing the code to specifically say each dwelling unit.
Right.
Or each dwelling unit within a multifamily.
Basically, I think that's the way the city attorney wanted it written. Again, I sent this to him and I haven't heard back. So I just wanted to know if the council is opposed or not opposed to having the code changed for one person who continues to come to you.
That's fine, change it.
Okay.
I would open a whole can of worms
What will?
if we,
If we
if
change
we,
it.
no,
I don't
that's the
know.
way it was.
I don't know. Well, that property's been being billed for 12 years now
Mhm.
and being charged 8 times whatever the residential rate is.
Yeah,
That's not.
Do you need a motion?
Unfortunately, the wording was, like you said,
Oh, there-
it's
well-
standard, I know that, but.
I think just wait until I hear back from the city attorney whether or not he's got
Do we-
multiple changes and then I'll bring it back.
At that
I
time,
don't
we will
know.
have to have it on the agenda to make. a
Yes,
motion to
yes,
change it.
right. I just wanted you to see that and talk about it.
Alright.
Go ahead.
So it sounds like you will wait for him.
Mhm.
13, amend city code chapter 165.29. This is the fences we've been talking about for quite a while.
Yeah, we've been talking about this has come up again, because there's been public that feels that we're measuring incorrectly based on the way our code is written. Although in the diagram it says, we measure 25 feet back in the visibility triangle from the street line / right-of-way line. Unfortunately, the way some of our code is written, it talks about from the point of intersection, and public feels like that's the point of pavement, which we know as city workers and engineers have verified, that is not where you measure from. It's the street / right-of-way line, because a street can go from property line to property line. So, I did run this past planning and zoning, and they did make a recommendation to amend item A under paragraph 5. Let me back up. The other thing that we're running into is people are wanting to put a 4-foot fence because chain link fence typically comes standard in 4 foot, and our code says 3 foot. So I guess if you continue to run into something, that's my experience. Sometimes maybe you take a look at that and consider amending it. Planning and zoning did make a recommendation that be amended to 4 foot. And then reference paragraph 14 and amend paragraph 14 to read the street right-of-way / property line as the point for measuring the 25 feet, but not give leniency on the 25 feet. So if that's agreeable to council, I would bring that back in ordinance form for consideration.
Is that 4 foot gonna create a problem for the extra foot? Is that big issue on the corners?
As far as
Because it's still
visibility,
the see-through,
Yeah,
so
it
chain
was-
link.
Yeah, I know, but I mean, just for visibility purposes.
Well, it still would say no more than 30% solid or more than 4 feet. So it still cannot be more than 30% solid. Tim has a recommendation or?
Yeah, I think with the
Caution
3 foot, where the 3 foot came from, Daryl, was a lot of times in standard cars, okay, not talking pickups or anything like that, they kind of think they drive up is roughly that 3 feet, give or take, of the pavement. So, because when we do site triangle studies for speed studies, things like that, that's what we use when we look at it in vertical curves and stuff. So that, I'm sure, is probably where that 3 foot came from.
The nice thing with Swisher is our speed limit's 20 to 25.
25 miles.
We're not doing 45 miles through town. So
Well,
they shouldn't be doing 45
That's debatable.
That's debatable.
I know for a fact,
We're
I
not
think
doing-
they go down Division Street.
Swisher view too.
There's a racetrack down there.
Do you motion or just
No,
bring it back?
I'll just bring it back.
Yep, sounds good. All right, Catalyst Grant, we are at that time again to get another committee together to let the community apply for Catalyst. Cannot have more than 2 council members on it. And then, Cody, do you remember who else was on it last year?
I think it was myself.
I don't know.
Oh, who else besides the council?
Besides council.
Laura,
Or who?
Okay.
Whoever. We have. Thought we had somebody else besides that.
Thanks, guys.
Was Tanya?
Well, time
Is it Tanya?
set in.
Was it just the 3 of you?
no,
No.
who was the,
I'm sure it was Nikki and Sonya, wasn't it?
no,
So Mike, you were on it?
Because.
Who was the other
Nikki
council
applied
member?
for it.
Oh, Adam, okay. Are you gonna do it again?
wasn't it the lady from Iowa City
Oh,
that-
Sarah Thompson.
Yeah,
Yeah,
wasn't,
so it wasn't a resident.
No.
It was- That's right.
She's the one that helped with
right,
It was-
the application.
Sarah, Laura, me and you sat on that.
Seems like a good fit.
Motion to appoint Mike and.
Motion to appoint Mike and Adam.
They're pretty well versed in that.
Shelley to replace Tanya.
Oh,
Tanya wasn't a member, was she?
she wasn't a member, she would just attend.
Okay.
Adam needs it.
Alright, so we have
Dude, look how good you did.
a motion.
I should say, I don't know, we didn't get the grant, so.
See, there you go. Throw me off it.
If nobody seconds, then Adam is.
I second.
Oh, you did? Thank you, okay.
I'll third it.
Well, we have to vote still.
Oh, okay.
Is Adam okay with this?
That's funny.
Okay. All those in favor of putting Mike and Adam back on the committee? Anyone opposed? Motion still carries. Thank you, guys. All right, enter into closed session. We need a motion and a second to enter into closed session.
Motion closed, or going to closed session.
Second.
Can I get a roll call vote, please?
Pujol.
Aye.
Roder.
Aye.
Stagg.
Aye.
Klein.
Aye.
Enoch.
Aye.
We're going into closed session at 7:32.